Teach me about
It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Woo! Oh, yeah. Live. Yeah. Woo! This week, starring special guest star Mr. Ronan Chris Murphy. Right off the plane from lovely Italy. And where's the stop button? It's upside down. Hi, Ronan.
It's awesome to be here again.
Awesome to have you here, jet lagged and all.
Yes.
Ronan goes to Italy at least once a year and does a series of workshops or something.
Workshops and some master classes in some different cities and
in Italy.
Play music and eat good food. And
I forgot to hit you up for a jar of olives.
Last
year I said to him, sure, you can move your Taxi TV event for a week, but you have to bring me back olives from Italy. And he actually brought them because he's a really good guy, and I ate every one of those.
Excellent.
I wouldn't share them with anybody. Anyway, let's say hello to the folks in the chat room. We have Greg Vaughn, Marion Laird, L. Harrison, Ken DePotter, can't read that one, John Engelman, Dean Turner, Lou Lewis, Jerry Webster, Ken DePotter again. Wow, Ken's in there twice. Anyway, hello, everybody. Welcome to the big show. Ronan is a very good friend of mine, a great friend of Taxi's. Not that he's a great friend of mine, but, you know, I'm not trying to equivocate or anything. But anyway, he's been around this place for a long, long time, and has great ears, great chops, great advice. Is going to be doing a class at the Road Rally coming up very soon, like 2 weeks and a couple of days.
Yowza.
Yeah, baby. November 1st through the 4th in beautiful Los Angeles. Got to tell you guys, the Road Rally, I know I say this every year, but you come and then you believe me. It is better this year than it's ever been before. Really, really proud of it. So you're going to love it. And the hotel is probably sold out. At least the $137 rooms are sold out at this point. So I think 157 they go up to, something like that. And they didn't have a whole lot of those rooms.
They're sold out.
Those are sold out too?
Yeah, because I tried to go in to check and they
really?
were sold out for the 1st through the 4th.
So we are setting up tents on the sidewalk. Taxi's Tent City. Now, actually, I'm in discussions with another hotel across the street to try and get you guys a good rate. So that's that. We're really excited, and it's coming together so well. But before Bria starts kicking me under the table, as she is prone to do, subscribe. You know, I mean, seriously, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, just do it right now. Click that little subscribe button. It looks like this. Share with your friends. Even if you have, like, deceased relatives, share, because Gmail or YouTube likes it. And, of course, like us, because we live in California and we need the emotional support.
And for people who follow me on social media,
yes,
tell them where they can learn about the Road Rally.
What?
Some of my people may not be taxi people.
And they don't know. Okay.
Tell them where they can learn about that, because we just talked about it. Taxi.com/rally with a small r.
That will take you to everything about the Road Rally. It'll show you I want to say 15 panels in the grand ballroom, somewhere around, I don't know, usually 75 to 90 different breakout classes. One-to-one mentors on 2 different days where any taxi member can spend 15 minutes with people like Ronan and sit there and do whatever you want with them. I mean, within reason. I can't play Gumby Doll with them, but you can play them music, get feedback, talk to them about, should I sign this publishing deal or should I not? All that great stuff. And what else do we have? Mentor lunches, which, by the way, the mentor lunches, we're still 2 weeks out and we're 2/3 sold out, and we've only sent out like 1 email. I'm going to send out another email later this week. They're going to sell out quickly. So if you're signed up for the Road Rally and you haven't signed up for your mentor lunch yet, do it. Bria is mouthing. I can't read lips.
Eat and greet.
Oh yeah, they're no longer called the mentor lunches because people were confusing them with the one-to-one mentors. So they're now called the music industry eat and greet. So basically, if you see anybody slower and smaller than you, you get to meet them and then eat them. No, greet them and then eat them. If you can catch them. What was the joke about the guy with the 2 guys camping, and he says the bear, he says, You only have to run faster than me or something
Exactly.
like that. Yeah.
Faster than who you're with.
What?
You just have to outrun who you're with.
Right. Outrun who you're
Yes.
with. Okay. So
And the rally's awesome.
Thank you.
It's the favorite. It's my favorite conference thing I do.
Is it the only
And-
one you go to?
No, I get invited to lots of them, and it's the one thing that we will not book anything else on the calendar. When
He comes home from Italy.
yeah, I mean literally we book
Wow.
overseas trips around it. It's that kind of awesome.
Well, we appreciate you
You know,
coming
when
every year.
clients approach about making records and stuff, we say beginning of November, not available.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just awesome. It's so much fun, and you know, I've met so many cool people that I've been collaborating with over the years and stuff. Taxi Road Rally it really, you know, when we look at it, has been a really big part of just the music I make in the world and collaborations and things like that. So yeah, it's
Good to
the
know.
one thing that it's fun, but even just for having a business and finding new people to work with and collaborate with, we won't miss it.
There's a vibe there that everybody goes, oh, Michael, look at what you've done. Look at what you've started. It's not me. All I did was open the barn doors.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the people that come from all over the world. People do come from like China and South America, lots from Australia. And there's actually, we're honoring Matt Hurt this year. We're giving him the Genesis Award because he was the genesis of this like paying it forward vibe at the Road Rally. It all really started with Matt and a couple other guys, like, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. So, yeah, it's not like other music conventions where a lot of guys in leather pants are like standing there looking cool and like everybody's trying to like vibe everybody else. Not that at all. It's extremely warm, extremely welcoming. Unbelievable amounts of information, unbelievable amounts of deals that get done. If you're watching the chat room, I'm sure that people will chime in and say, that they met somebody standing in the registration line on Thursday night, ended up collaborating with them, and it resulted in a deal, which resulted in a TV placement. So all this great stuff happens. We hope you can join us. I just saw Linda Cullum in the chat room somewhere. I want to say thank you. She sent me a Max Bickford hoodie today. I hope I got to work, and there was a box on my desk, and I opened it up. Remember the education of Max Bickford? It was, what's his name? Richard Dreyfuss. And it lasted for one season, and somehow Linda got her hands on a sweatshirt, a hoodie, a really nice hoodie from the show. I think that she stalked somebody who worked on the show and then beat him up and took the shirt. Kidding. Anyway, she sent me the shirt, and so thank you. That was very, very sweet of you. Put a smile on my face.
Based on the comments, I think we're going to have a lot of leather pants this year. So
Awesome. Make sure you wear a codpiece.
yeah, 18-year-old me could have pulled them off, but
I
middle-aged me will opt out.
Yeah, I could not have pulled that off at any age. So he's going to do all the heavy lifting today. What we're going to do is we're going to play stuff, and Ronan is going to let you know about the mix. Did people include any, like, can you listen to this aspect of my mix or not so much?
Not really. No.
Okay. So basically, he's just going to jot down a few thoughts about each of the things we listen to and comment on the mix. I may chime in every now and then, but primarily him. And yes, for people who've never watched the show before, we do listen through the NS10s behind us. It comes through the microphone. The reasons are manifold, but basically, it's a logistical pain in the butt to play it through the system. So, and it's hard to comment. We'd have to be like muting microphones, unmuting microphones, listening in earbuds, which is suboptimal. Ooh, that'd be a good name for a band, the Suboptimals. Anyway, so that's it. And normally we don't mention the names of the people who submit the stuff, but we're not critiquing the songs today. We're only critiquing the mixes. So I am going to mention the names of the people whose music we're listening to. And to kick it off, we're going to listen to I'll Be That Way, which is done by L.B. Franklin and Richard Dance. And let us know. I would say probably get through like half to 2/3 of each thing once you feel that you've heard enough. And then Bria will fade it with her magic finger, and then you can comment, and there you go. So without any further ado, how's my level over here? It is good to go. Let's have a listen to I'll Be That Way. Sounds amazing. Ooh, modulation.
Yeah. Nice. I'm not going to get to beat up on this one a lot.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, part of this too is I'm listening in a room I haven't really spent much time listening to, so I've got to.
We let you listen to one of your own songs
we
before
did.
the show
Know,
started. Come on.
So no, but there's a few things, and I mention that because sometimes frequency balances are a little off from what you expect, and those are the things that jumped out at me.
Look around you. This room is perfectly tuned. It's got 4 corners. It's got an acoustic ceiling. It's got carpet on the floor, a wood table, and it's perfect. Anyway.
But anyway, overall, really, really good.
Yeah.
The one thing that jumped out at me, and again, there's not a big list of things to go through, is there's a big presence, especially on the guitar, probably right in the 2.5 to 3K range. Mm-hmm. Very, very typical range to be careful of with single coil guitars. Single coil guitars and female singers. Actually, when female singers sing intensely, they have a big boost up in that range as well.
Single coil female
singers? No, yeah, single coil female singers. But those are like 2 instruments where that's a range where you have to pay a lot of attention to.
Right.
Because it's a range that a little bit of that energy makes things exciting. Too much of it sort of gets piercing and you want to turn it down. So the guitar had a lot of that forward presence right in that range.
It almost had a snap to it,
yeah.
Which goes with Richard. Richard Dance's playing guitar in this, and that's his style. And very chicken picky.
And the playing is great too, but also, but part of it can come off as a little harsh and piercing sometimes. So I'd consider maybe mellowing that out just a little bit. And even a lot of the chicken picking guys, like in Nashville, they're actually running compressor pedals.
Yeah.
On their pedal boards to take off a little of that really bright forward snap out of it to mellow it out. And so you had that, and then you had the snare drum come in, which had a lot of high mid energy.
I thought the snare was a little too pointed and skinny for my taste.
Yeah, I think pointed is a good subjective way to talk about this sort of 2.5 to 3K issue, and also a little 10K up there. And the thing about it is I found them to be a little disproportionate compared to all the other elements.
So it could have been the mixing environment he was working in was lacking those frequencies, and maybe it didn't punch out there,
Possibly.
or maybe it's just his own.
Yeah.
Your taste is terrible. No, I'm kidding.
But no, it's really good. But that's the one thing, and the thing about that too, thinking about, because we had those couple little elements, and there was one other element that I kind of forget that came in with more energy around that range.
There was a keyboard part or something that came in that I remember.
Almost metallic on top.
Yeah, and I remember thinking they should have chosen another instrument because it didn't really feel at home with those other instruments.
Yeah.
To me, it wasn't even just an EQ thing. It was like, dude, that was the wrong instrument.
Mm-hmm. So, but I think if those things pointed out just a little bit less, we're not talking night and day, then I think you could bring up the whole experience, even just with the volume knob.
Right.
And people want to, when they crank it up more, everything feels a little bit better.
How'd you feel about the bottom end?
I would, decent. Again, we don't have, on Yamaha NS10s, they start rolling off a lot around 75 hertz. We don't hear a lot.
Not mine. They're perfect.
Okay, yes, of course. This room perfects any imperfections the NS10s
That's right.
have. The one thing, the bottom end was good. The one thing that might have been worth considering is on the kick drum. The kick drum was a little bit round, which is not bad. Modern kick drums tend to have a little bit more snap on top, like a little 4K forward, just a little bit, but that's totally subjective.
It was right on the cusp of, is it a little poofy or is it not? I was trying to pass a value judgment on it. Went, good enough. I'll live with it. But
and one thing too is also because that guitar, which is great playing, so you definitely want to feature it. But there's kind of the section before where we stopped it. Mm-hmm. The guitar kind of was more of a support thing with some other interesting things going on.
Yeah,
I definitely would have liked to heard the guitar automated to come back a little bit and let that be more of a support, because that was so forward when it was the time when the guitar was just sort of laying back, playing support for the other elements. It was still pulling my ear. So a little bit of dynamic automation to like have that guitar tucked back a little bit.
Have you met my friend Richard Dance?
I believe I have.
Richard, I love him to death. I mean, he's actually like a good friend, and we hang out. Once a year he comes out and does a taxi TV with me. We go out have a nice dinner together, and he's an incredible guitar player. Seriously, did I not tell you before the show went live?
Yes.
I would put that guy on stage with like
Absolutely.
Robert Cray, and he could hold his own.
Yeah.
Robert Cray would be impressed, as a matter of fact. Anyway, Richard does this stuff in like the most archaic analog, like, I don't know, maybe 8 tracks on a quarter-inch, 8 tracks on a cassette. So there is no dynamic automation. Theirs is dynamic automation.
Again, that is dynamic automation. That's how we did it for years and sometimes still do.
That's right, damn it. Anyway, but I mean, overall, I felt it was like 80% there.
Absolutely.
So
and that last 20% was probably a couple tiny adjustments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we made it sound much worse than that, but yeah.
Yeah, and I wish there was a laundry list I could go through so I could sound really smart of complaining about things.
You don't need a laundry list.
But really, that was it. It was good. Again, except for those frequency things jumping out, it just sounded totally pro, and kind of, especially hearing the situation where he does it, is all the more impressive.
Yeah, and you know what? For those of you who are into old cars, especially stuff that's like late 60s through maybe 1980, with a preference of like 1972 Buick Rivieras and Monte Carlos, check out, just Google Richard Dance Crawdaddy and the word cars, and check out, I don't know, 6-8 times a year he buys these cars, usually pretty well restored, and restores them more, and if you like those cars, he's passionate about them, and he finds really cool ones and flips them. So yeah, check it out.
Cool, viewer from Australia, right on.
What?
First-time viewer from Australia.
Wow.
Welcome.
What time is it in Australia? About 15 hours ahead of us, I'm guessing. So it's like 6 a.m. or something like that. He's probably not watching right now. It's the question I asked is still...
Actually, Lamar, who mixed this, and ironically, he turned up the guitar and the snare at the last minute.
Okay.
There you go. All right, it's 7:18 in Hong Kong.
Wow.
All right. Awesome.
Okay, let's move on. The next one we're going to listen to is called Take Me Away. This one is a song with a vocal, and it's by Kevin Bailey.
Shows me what I need to hide, to fight. I'm straight on a highway and choosing the wrong way. It seems it's so hard to believe we would ever be, but the odds are still with me. So I'll take this on the other side, just one reason why. Take me away, 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 so far away. You take me away, you take me away. So I'll take this ride on the other side, just one reason why.
Okay.
Good?
Yep.
I think think we need more bottom on the audience. All right.
Nice. So I love the vibe of it.
Yeah.
And one of the frustrations of giving mix critiques is you always want to go back to the production.
Right. Well, you can.
And
I mean,
I
it
think
plays
it's
into
important,
it.
and I think
Yeah.
it's really important to do. The one glaring thing about this, and if you want to learn more about this, Sunday morning at the road rally, if you're not too hungover, come to the theater, and I'm doing a What the Hitmakers Are Doing That You Are Not. That is
Ooh.
basically my class, so Sunday morning.
Good title.
But the thing that's going on here that's hurting the mix is the groove elements of it.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a defined groove here. And
It comes in with that rhythmic part and stays there.
well, we
It
have
never
that, but we
digs
also
deep.
we sort of have a dung 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 dung.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a groove itself, and then we have a ding 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 a ding. Got another guitar kind of get it, and then the drums dung ga dung ga ga dung ga ga ga. So we have all these different things, and I've got a great German drummer friend named Benny Greb, who's one of my favorite quotes of all time. He said, "Groove is a matter of democracy." And it really is about the different elements sort
think
of
about that groove.
kind
Okay.
of agreeing and finding consensus about this is what we're going to do and move forward. And so one of the things that I think keeps this song from shining is that it's tough to bop your head to. And as
You know,
silly as that sounds,
you guys know I'm big on the head bop. So
but it's true. Like whether you're talking, hip hop or the Eagles or AC/DC or Metallica, when you listen to these great productions by great artists,
yeah.
there's that your
That's what I
body
do.
feels it.
Yeah.
It's like we are doing this unto you.
That's right.
And one of the challenge, and I see this, and not to beat up on was it Kevin? Yeah. Is I see this in a lot of when I do critiques at the road rally and outside too, of you have these different groove elements that are sort of not supporting, they're fighting each other rather than supporting each other.
Right.
And that's something you rarely find on hit records.
So that takes you out of the song so much that the mix almost doesn't even matter. It
Yeah.
becomes somewhat irrelevant
And,
because,
I actually shared a post I'd posted like 4 years ago on Facebook. I shared it again today because it popped up. And it was, there's few things that will help a mix as much as a drummer playing deep in the pocket. And it is that thing when a band grooves, your whole mix sounds better.
Yep.
And so that's the thing I would almost go back on. And truth is, if this was sent to me to mix,
You'd call and say,
Yeah.
can we fix a few things before I start the
yeah,
mix?
I mean, if there was a deadline like, hey, this needs to get into that movie on Monday, or
Right.
the single's got to get released by Christmas or something, we'd go forward. But I'd say, hey, do you have the option of going back and rethinking this and finding what's your central groove and building around that?
Yeah.
Because really, when everything grooves together, one of you guys who's mixed like 3 songs in your life, you could do a mix that sounded better than me who's mixed thousands of songs on a track that doesn't groove. Did I say
Right.
that right?
Yeah, right. If they had something that does groove,
Yeah.
their thing would sound better than an experienced old dog like you doing something that doesn't groove.
Correct. Uh-huh.
Because the
Yeah.
groove just, we both know this. When you cut rhythm tracks with a great band all live out in the room, you
Mm-hmm.
sit in the control room, oftentimes by yourself, just like in ecstasy, because all those elements just sound so right together. And it's not that you or I are wizards behind the console. It's because they're getting it so right on the other side of the glass.
Absolutely.
We couldn't screw it up if we tried.
And so outside of that, on a mix related thing, like the sounds themselves, most of them were pretty good. The one I didn't like was the kind of distorted electric guitar things, which just sounded like a virtual guitar amplifier buzzy thing. And
Don't get all technical, okay?
yeah, exactly. And that's one of those things where I actually would have probably even just tried to mute that in the mix because it didn't sound necessarily cool or anything to it. I'd rather something that either sounded really cool or
Right.
not be there. That's the thing. Like something should be awesome and bring something to the party, or it just shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
A lot of the times. So I'd see if I could either mute that or manipulate it somehow, run it through something else to give it some more character.
Reamp it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other mix thing too is, again, we're listening on as I said, these speakers, which are of course perfect in Michael's room, but anywhere else,
Flawless listening environment.
Again, they start really rolling off pretty heavily around 75 hertz. I didn't really get a sense of bass in this,
Right.
in terms of bass. So I would have looked at either whether it was a level thing or an EQ thing to make sure that...
And a pocket thing, because the
Yeah.
bass didn't feel locked to the kick
Yeah.
drum. No groove, no bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
It was all part of the lack of bass.
Yep. And I think, but even a little more bass, and again, I say maybe a little more bass because we don't know if there's a ton of it, low sub stuff that we're not hearing. But if you bring up more bass, you hear more of the instrument. But also a big part of how we hear guitar sounds is how they interact with the bass. So if you listen to like your favorite like guitar record with the killer guitar tones, if you muted the bass, you'd probably think, man, these guitars aren't exciting at all.
Yeah.
You put the bass in, like, these guitars are awesome. And
Just
so
like that.
yeah, so I'd probably find a way to bring up a little more of the bass and low frequency energy to
Yeah.
help support the guitars and especially kind of higher register voice too, and make everything sound a little richer and fuller.
Let's talk about the voice for a second. That was my big takeaway, was that the vocal felt underserved in the mix. It wasn't a powerful vocal. It wasn't like pitchy or anything, but it didn't have a lot of personality to it. And I kind of had the feeling that the gentleman, Kevin, probably mixed this himself or was in the room when it was mixed and wasn't loving his vocal execution and was like pulling it back because it felt timidly mixed on the vocal. Just an observation. And now I want to tell you about something I've been trying to tell you about for a month. It just remembered it as we were talking about the lack of bottom. I went, I guess it's like a month ago, Bobby Osinski and I, he was videotaping me talking about sync stuff, film and TV sync licensing. And we did it at Westlake Studios in Hollywood. Have you ever been in the room where they did Thriller.
Thriller.
Michael Jackson, yeah.
I believe I have. I think I've been in most of the rooms at Westlake, but I couldn't tell you which one actually.
Well, you would know because two of the rooms, Studio A and Studio B, have 4311s in the ceiling pointing down at the floor. And now, there was a time in my life before I used NS10s where I used 4311s on a daily basis and loved them, even though they had their flaws. Once you get used to them, you know what you're doing, and they were good utilitarian speakers. Well, okay, guys, why are there 4311s? These are 12-inch three-way JBLs from late 60s through probably like 79-ish. And the reason is Michael Jackson loved to come in the control room and get on the floor staring up at the ceiling, and he'd go, he didn't want the sound shooting over him. So they have 4311s that would blow down on the floor.
Nice. What the king wants, the king gets.
Yeah, absolutely. But I got to say, it literally put a lump in my throat and a tear in my eye to listen to some of that stuff in the room where it was done on the famous Westlake monitors, which,
Nice.
those guys at Westlake, they've got a million stories. They're great guys. Al and Steve, thank you, dudes. Anyway, so any other comments on Kevin's song, Take
I don't
Me
think
Away?
so.
Okay, let's move on and listen to I Don't Know. This is by Lisa Ann Wright, and it's a song with a vocal.
I don't know if you still love me. I don't know if you still care. High and low, you're still above me, and your love's still up in the air. But I know there must be a reason why you come to me and then you always go. If for everything there is a season, then why am I still frozen in the snow? I don't know.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. What are you thinking, sir?
I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's really cool. I love the vibe. I love the tune. I love the vocal performance.
We were talking about Gray Slick before we started the
yeah.
show. He lives out in the boonies, and a guy who, what was his name?
Rick Gerard.
Yeah, that worked on a lot of the early,
Jefferson Airplane.
yeah, probably before they were Jefferson Starship, I'm guessing.
Oh, yes. When they were doing songs like White Rabbit.
Right.
And not We Built This City on Rock and Roll.
Right. Okay. Anyway, that stuff was very steeped in reverb.
Yes,
This was steeped in reverb.
And I'm totally cool with that because it's obviously intentional.
Yeah.
The one thing about the reverb that I would address is I can't remember the last time I've mixed a record with reverb where I haven't EQ'd the reverb. And
I've got that note.
there we go. And normally I'm EQing reverbs to draw the listener's ear less to them. Like a lot of times, low pass filter and cutting off the high frequencies to get rid of the sizzle. But obviously on this production, they wanted it to be a feature. Like in a way, like they did in the '80s, like a band called the Fleet Foxes, their new stuff.
Right.
It's very much part of it. The thing that jumped out at me is there's kind of a resonance in the voice, which is beautiful. I love this singer, but around kind of 900 hertz or so.
Oh, 900, not even 700, but you zeroed it in on 900. I'm impressed.
But like when jumped up into that range, that natural resonance, which is fine in the voice. And reverbs are frequency multipliers.
Right.
And so all of a sudden it became kind of jarring right there.
It multiplied the hell out of it.
So what I would do is, find those spots where it gets a little piercing or spiky or jumping out and just like loop that if you're working in a DAW. Just loop that part and then use a parametric EQ on the reverb return and just sweep till it like really jumps out and then just pull it down. When you pull that down, you're still going to get all the mojo and everything from that reverb. It'll just be pleasant all the way through.
It was literally rolling around like a marble in a jar. I mean,
it's those couple specific notes that she sang, because overall it was groovy and over the top, but in an artistic, intentional way. The other thing is this is really, really soupy. And with everything kind of mushed together, which I don't mind. Great producer Daniel Lanois does a lot of productions that are kind of soupy where things blend together.
Matzo ball soupy.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the things is when you go for soupy, you start to pull away some of the personality and character of the individual elements, which is okay. But for me, I thought there was a little too much buildup and really like in the 300 kind of hertz range, and mostly you had that one guitar going playing straight acoustic guitar that had a lot of that energy. And so I think what you could have done with that is pulled down that kind of range on just that strummy acoustic guitar, and then that other kind of more riff type acoustic guitar would jump out. There was like kind of a banjo type.
I love the banjo part.
Yeah.
I thought the banjo was genius. I would have brought it up, but it is also the kind of thing where if you bring it up too much, then you've killed the beauty of it. So I was wrestling. I had a little internal debate going on if it was pure genius that it was at the level it was at, or it was overlooked and they forgot to bring it up.
I think if we did what I just talked about, again, finding that kind of woofy resonance of the acoustic guitars.
Yeah.
And we're not talking 20 dB down. We're talking, a nice wide Q, but, down 3 or 4 dB. All of a sudden that banjo pops out without having to be
nice
more...
wide Q means a broad range of frequency spectrum sucked out of the middle of the low mids of the guitars.
Yeah, and when you're EQing...
Translation.
Yeah. So but basically when you're EQing, and since so many of you are probably in the DAW, EQs that look like this aren't very musical sounding.
Right.
EQs look this are these wide ones. So all your classic, your Neve, your Helios, your Pultec, all those kind of things are big wide Qs because they sound really smooth and natural.
Somebody today, one of our members sent a thing. They are Harrison consoles from back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't personally love them, but they were actually used on the Michael Jackson records.
Yeah.
They've got a DAW that is the Harrison 32 series console, and I feel like getting it just to hear what it sounds like, but I didn't love them back in
Yeah,
the day.
and if you're into that, company Great River has basically done the Harrison EQ in a 500 format.
Yeah.
So if that's your thing.
Did you like Harrison consoles?
I haven't done enough miles to really have formed an opinion on them.
Back in my day, Neve and SSL weren't really a thing yet. I was like a little early on those. And MCI and Harrison's were the predominant consoles, at least on the East Coast.
And I did a lot of records on MCIs.
Really?
And the Sonys that came after them.
Munchy crunchy inside? Oh, man.
But that's beautiful. I love that track.
I thought the banjo was like my favorite thing in there. I loved it. Okay, this one is called Mike. How would you pronounce that? Microlebin?
Yeah. I'd go let's go Microlebin.
Okay. And this is an instrumental by Glenn Brooks.
Sorry, Glenn, if we butchered your song title. Yeah. Man, really, really good. Yeah, very, very good.
I literally had no comments.
I had
That's a first, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, anything I have to say would be things that you could look at differently that might make it move a little bit better or sit a little bit better. The one thing that I would have considered experimenting, if this dropped down onto my lap and said, take this to the next level, I'd probably say, do you really need to pay me? It's already really good. But a couple things that I might experiment with is, one thing, the sample that you use for the main 4 on the floor, that quarter note kick drum, has a really aggressive high end, which is great. I mean, that's very modern sounding. But I probably would have experimented with some dynamic EQ, or just automated EQ, where at the beginning where there was it was sparser.
Right.
I would have maybe scaled back the tick tick tick, which is sort of like 4K and 10K,
rather than
crack
letting
of
it be static throughout the same sound.
Yeah, and especially because that would have drawn more attention to the bigness of it, the boom, boom. And then when the track gets really dense at the end, gradually let that high frequency come back in, because that real like 10K forwardness on the kick drum allows the kick drum to punch through when there's all that dense synth stuff going on.
It's been so many years since I've worked on a record, but funny enough, I was thinking about you being here while I was driving to work today. Back in my day, you used an equalizer and a compressor. Those were your main tools in reverb, whatever. But nowadays, so much is done with layering. And I was thinking about kick drums specifically, that you could have 6 kick drums that are layered to get the same effect that we would get by adding, 2K to a kick drum or sucking out some low mids or something.
Yeah.
And I wonder which is more efficient and which is better. I don't know, because I've never done, I've done a little layering back in my day, but nothing like is done today.
But
so,
like it's not uncommon to do things if we are on a production where we're bringing in samples to supplement or even sometimes replace.
Yeah.
But if you do sort of the Nirvana quiet loud thing, where your choruses are really guitar dense and heavy and the verses are more sparse, sometimes I'll bring in a kick drum sample that is just kick.
But
right
a
on
lot
top.
of the EDM stuff. Who was it I was talking to the other day? Somebody had like 130 tracks going on something.
Yeah.
Oh, it was Chuck Henry when he was here, and he had multiples of kick drums.
Yeah.
Like 2, 3. Not it wasn't 2. It was more like 3, 4, 5. And that's how people get their sounds today. So I'm curious someday to try that versus EQing. I favor EQing in my brain because it's the physics of sound. It's what guys like us grew up on. But you know what? And then as I got off the freeway, I realized so is layering. It's a different way to get the same result, but it's all the physics of sound.
And to me, they're a little bit different too, because when you have the layering, you actually have the frequencies more static. Because when you've got a kick drum played by a human, every little variation in intensity is different range of energy. So the first hit might be a little darker, the second a little brighter.
Yeah.
And so one of the things for layering, for better or for worse, is it brings in that whatever frequency you're trying to pull in a more static controlled way.
Which in EDM makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't do it on, an Eagles song.
Correct. But modern rock and modern pop,
Yeah.
that kind of is the style and aesthetic for a lot of stuff. And if you listen to something, like mixed by Chris Lord Alge or something, you're talking static kick drum samples through huge, if not the song, huge portions of the song, and he's the most successful mixer to ever walk planet Earth. So,
no argument.
and again, not to say that's right or wrong, but what's going on. The other thing that popped out at me is kind of in the 900 hertz 1K range.
Yeah.
There was a lot of buildup in the synth energy, which I think and that's even in mastering, you could address that. If you pulled out a little bit more of that, because that's a range that really draws our ear in, and when you build up, we focus on that. And a lot of times, if you pull a little of that range out, we focus more on the extremes. We get more of the sizzle from the synths and the thud from the kick drum.
Right.
Also, when I heard this, especially the first chunk of it, I thought, this could be modern thriller film score kind of music. Where that's a range where you're going to have a lot of dialogue and sound effects. So when you're composing for film, television, video games, you need to be real conscious about what goes on in that mid-range.
Right.
Because there is...
Don't fight the dialogue.
Yeah, and dialogue, and especially like in video game work where I'll do a lot of stuff, that you need to be able to hear that stuff. You need to be able to hear footsteps.
This would have been breathing as the perpetrator was going down the hallway with the blood dripping knife looking for his next victim.
Yeah, but this is fantastic. This is really great.
Excellent. Somebody asked a question in the chat room that I want to address. Which we could do an entire 90-minute show on this, and we won't, but objectivity versus subjectivity. Somebody said, how do you know, when something is right? Experience. You could just have to do a lot of it, and you're right. If the two of us sat down to mix the same thing, his version of right would be different from my version of right, and they'd both be right. So there is no real right and wrong unless it's just a stupid mistake or lack of judgment because you don't have the experience yet. So compare to other stuff in the genre, and you get to know what the library, kind of the range of normal is, and know how far that you can push the envelope and the little salt and peppery things that you can add to it. But it's all so subjective, and you have to look at your own subjective decisions and try and be as objective as you can in doing that. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on. Let's listen to, this one's called Freedom by Luke Holton, It's a Song.
Freedom. We're gonna walk that long and rocky road to freedom. Oh, freedom. We're gonna raise our eyes and let our voices rise to that holy place of freedom. Oh, freedom. We're gonna speak the truth and clap our hands for freedom. Yeah, freedom. We're gonna keep it strong. We're gonna raise our song to that holy place of freedom. Let me hear that sound of marching people. Let me hear that sound of strife and hope. Every generation's got to fight for what's right, because freedom isn't free. No, freedom isn't free. Freedom dies in silence, but it shines when spirits sing. Oh, let it sing. We're gonna knock on doors till they open wide for freedom, sweet freedom. We'll stand undefiled. We're gonna lift each and every child to that holy place, the holy place of freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, yeah.
I couldn't help but have the thought immediately that this is in your wheelhouse. This is an artist that you would enjoy working with.
Yes. Great vocalist. I don't know if that's the composer that submitted this is the vocalist or not, but great vocal.
Absolutely.
There's really most of the things that I would say on this would be character aesthetic things.
Okay.
To me, I would have pulled the saxophone down just a little bit in terms of level because I thought it popped out a little too much, and possibly the voice. But for me, this the vocal sounded so rootsy and kind of just natural that I thought there was some elements of the mix and the production that sounded a little more slick. And the one thing that first jumped out is like the high end on the reverb. So when he came in, you've got that great, just soulful, natural kind of thing, and we get that sizzle from the reverb, which puts it into a very 1980s thing, a very kind of slick, synthetic kind of thing. And that took me a little out of the space I was in. Again, this is just esoteric, but it is part of mixing.
It's so funny that too. I had none of the same thoughts you did, which goes to show. And I'm
You're wrong,
right? And I'm not saying that you are. I'm just saying this goes to show how subjective it all is. If I'd mixed this and you had mixed this, we would have taken completely different approaches.
Yeah.
But continue. I'm enjoying your analysis.
But so I would have kept the reverbs again, low pass filters, cutting off the high end of reverbs. I do it on almost every record I ever mix, just so your ear isn't as drawn to it, where you can put the singer in a space. And even with the piano, which I'm assuming is a digital sample, because that's such a kind of soulful vocal, I probably would have tried to find a sample that felt a little more natural, like maybe like an old upright kind of sample rather than that kind of smoother. It wasn't quite Roland D50 kind of digital piano, but it had a hint of that. So I would have tried to make this feel like as rootsy and soulful as possible and try to take a little of the sheen off of it. Because the writing is epic enough that it still would sound big and full without it. Arrangement, the only thing I wasn't nuts about is that at the end of what was kind of the chorus, first time through, the rhythm and the drums sort of got real busy in a way that didn't feel like it moved the song forward. Sort of like we're going to the apex of that big build in the chorus, and the drums and things got real busy, which again, took me a little out of it.
It actually, I remember hearing that tom fill and thinking, it's kind of a dated pattern, but I liked it. It was like a good bowl of chili.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
And the toms sounded the touch on the toms was right for the fill, and that saved it for me.
Yeah,
But
I would
it
have
was
liked
a
that
little
fill
bit-
at a different place, like kind of as a transition out of that chorus rather
of
than over
going-
top of the apex of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I agree.
But really, again, beautifully done. Like, really nice.
For those of you who've never heard of this microphone, you've probably seen pictures of it. I don't actually know the name, the model number, but the Neumann Hitler bottle. You've probably seen pictures of Adolf Hitler talking in these microphones. They had this big, fat body that contained who knows what, probably a nuclear weapon or something inside of it. And then this skinny little neck coming out with a capsule that was about the size of a golf ball. And they were called Hitler bottle microphone. We're coming up with artwork here. Yep, there you go. That's exactly what it looked like. Anyway, I've only... Did you put... Oh, I thought you put a swastika.
No. That was a grill pattern.
Really bad one, I might say. Anyway, I used one once on a vocalist, and the assistant engineer at the studio said to me, don't use it. And I said, that is the best vocal mic I've ever heard. This song reminded me, had a similar sound to the vocal. There's a texture on top that's hard to get with an equalizer, and frankly, and it's a combination frequently of a good preamp and a good microphone and the right kind of vocalist standing at the right distance. Anyway, the guy said, don't use the Hitler bottle. I said, why not? Because he said, it sounds so friggin' good that if you ever have to do any punch-ins on the vocal after we leave here today, you'll never be able to match that sound. The kid was so right. It's amazing microphone. Don't ever use one. I thought that I just love this. I thought that texturally, I'm very Randy Newman-esque.
Yep.
The piano part was even kind of Randy Newman-esque.
Yep.
I thought that the touch on the piano, I didn't notice things that you noticed, but I just thought that it was just...
I love the performance of it. It was great.
Yeah, and so for me, I was all about the performance of it and wasn't thinking about the sample or was it real or not. But I appreciate the fact that he never really rocked out on anything. He understood that part was just boom, boom, boom.
Agree
boom,
completely.
Moved it forward. Anyway, great job on that. Let us listen to, where the hell am I, Bria? That was Freedom, right? We are moving on to Ice Age by Fire Tiger. This sounds like something from a video game. And it's a song with a vocal.
You bring in the ice age, it don't matter what you say. You bring in the ice age upon me, baby. It don't matter what you do, I'm still gonna care about you. You bring in the ice age upon me. It's so cold when you are leaving.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome.
I'm dying to know if that was recorded some time ago or if that was recently recorded and made to sound vintage. So if you're in the chat room, let us know.
It's anyway,
Yeah.
until we get that answer.
Yeah.
I
I'm
loved
gonna
it.
watch that
I think
while you're-
I think it's modern with a nod to retro. There's a few kind of things in the drum sound. A couple of the sounds made me think modern. The singer, I love the singer. She basically sounds like Madonna with better technique.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed it, but I think Madonna's great.
Yeah, sure you
Fantastic.
do.
I do.
Good backtracking on that one.
Oh man, Madonna's music album, it's so awesome. But anyway, I digress. I mean, you guys are looking at my mug, but I mean, within a second of that, there was a smile on my face and my head was bobbing.
Yeah.
I mean, and that is so important. The fact that instantly I was sucked into this because it just popped out, great groove, everything was in the right place. The one thing that I would, a couple little things that I think about. One was like a taste thing, but one is a better mixing thing. The quality of the reverb sounded very retro, and I don't. If this is kind of meant to be sort of modern and vintage, I might have looked for reverb sound that was a little bit more contemporary, which probably would have been a hint less, but also a little less woofy in the mids. So the reverb kind of clouded the voice a little bit. That's just a taste thing, because also, again, it did sound like some of the stuff that came out in the 80s with all sorts of wild reverbs.
It sounded
going on.
like a first-gen Lexicon 224
Yeah.
on plate set at 2 seconds and just let
with,
it rip.
with nothing
Right,
else done
right,
to it.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly, correct. But the one thing that I would say as a critique that could improve this is those background vocals, as awesome as they were way too big. Because when they came in, you reached for the volume knob.
Yeah.
And you turned. So you
Right,
had it up at the beginning, and we're like, yeah, we're totally
Yeah,
into
but
it.
I was also watching my meters peg.
And then that background vocal, those masks
Right,
came in.
when they-
You turned it down, and then when we went back into verse,
It was too low.
Now we don't get to rock anymore.
Yep.
So the challenge is to find a way to make background vocals sound big without them actually adding so much level to it. And big part of that too.
Tell them how to do it, Bob.
Well, since you asked, the one thing is all of the background vocals were bright. It sounded like you'd boosted up the high end on all of them. And the lead vocal is a little bright, but I think in a really nice, appropriate way. But when all those other vocals came in with all really, really bright, it just got too harsh, and we wanted to pull it down, and your levels and stuff. So part of it is when you're building up background vocal stacks, don't jam a lot of the same frequency in over and over again. It sounds like a lot of high end boosted on this. So if you've got a stack, whether it's just like 3 musicians or a stack of 50, let a few of those have some high frequencies. Let a few of those have a little more lows. Let a few of those.
And try different distances from the microphone, too, so that you get a little texture.
Yeah, but also I think just the arrangement was big enough that even without the volume, we still would have gotten that sense of big, powerful chorus. And if you listen to, mixes by the great mixers in rock or pop or anything, you'll notice the choruses are gigantic and then they get smaller. But if you watch the meters, they don't really move that much.
Right.
And so it's about finding kind of a spot for everything. And it's exciting because you get that first excitement of, boom, the big chorus explodes. But the challenge is you got to come out of that again, too. And so that's
the art of really understanding compression.
Yeah, but
I mean, there's more that goes into it.
But I would do it with levels.
arrangement-wise,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's like people don't pay attention to that
Yeah.
stuff, and so it's like they're focusing. Right now, we're mixing the chorus. The vocals sound amazing, and they just don't pay attention to how it all fits together.
And the big thing, like how it comes into compression, and it's a long argument about how much would be appropriate or where to do it. But if this became a hit, which I'd love this to become a hit, and we start hearing it on the radio, regardless of any opinions you have about compression, once this gets on TV or radio,
Yeah.
they're going to squash the bejesus out of it. And so if your chorus is giant with those huge vocals, that's a lot of just physical energy. That's a lot of voltage, which is going to make those compressors just boom.
Yeah.
So your drums and everything are going to get super tiny.
The best
on
tutorial
radio.
that they could use on whoever mixes the best tutorial available to mankind would be an ABBA record. Because the vocals were very ABBA,
Yeah.
your whatever you call them, and they had the art of the big group background vocal fitting into the mix
Yeah.
down to a science.
Yeah, but this is a great tune, and except for a couple level things, a fantastic production.
Yeah, I liked it. Sorry if I'm leaning in. Oh, look, it's that time of year again where the sun is low on the horizon. I even hung up. I took some, just so you guys know, I took some road rally schedules, the thing, the program, that's got all this panel and that panel, and I taped them together so I could see what they'd look like as a program. And so now they're hanging up over by the windows where the blinds meet to prevent this, but missed that spot. Anyway, let's move on to... This one's called, well, you could pronounce it clave up, or you could call it clave up. I'm curious to see if it's got claves in it. This is by Sydney T, and it's an instrumental.
Nice. Love it.
How can you not love that instrument? Never gets old. Okay. Woo! So many images conjured up from that track. It's amazing. Anyway, hit it.
Hit it. Arrangement wise, performance wise, creating the tune, I think it's fantastic. I have nothing negative to say about it.
And it's got a clav in it.
Yeah,
Doesn't
and there
get
you
any
go.
better
So
than that.
what more do you need?
Yeah.
It also has everything bright.
Yes, it does. Really? I didn't think the guitar was bright enough.
And it's okay. I mean, it was a super bright guitar, and it was right on the edge of like, okay, I'm cool with it. But the bass was bright, the hi-hats were bright, the clav was bright.
Very little bottom to compensate for all that brightness also.
And truth is, if there was an album of this, as much as I may have loved the music, I wouldn't make it to song 3.
Right.
Because when you have so much high frequency going all the time, it gets really fatiguing to listen to.
Well, you'd spend songs 2 and 3 looking for the Q-tips to get the blood out of your ears.
And
honey, where'd you put the Q-tips?
But and that's the thing is when you put a mix together, you can't have a lot of elements with a lot of high frequencies or a lot of low frequencies if you want them to translate
You know
in
what?
the way that we normally.
That's an indication to me. Tell me if you agree that they tried to optimize every instrument by itself, not in context.
Yeah, it feels like that.
And then opened it all up, and it was like,
Yeah. And
we've all made that mistake, by the way.
And yeah, so that when you have a bunch of stuff going together, when everything's bright, it just gets fatiguing. And the thing is also, you don't get the coolness of the brightness of whatever particular instrument gets to be the star. So really, when I'm putting a mix together, at one point there's one or two elements that get to have high frequencies.
Yeah.
Because truth is, with that, like that really bright guitar, if that clav was darker and meatier,
Yeah.
we would still hear that clav as having high frequencies by
Absolutely.
the way it blended
Yeah.
with the other elements, or having a hi-hat.
It would have had a little more meat, a little more growl to it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, and the guitar, you're right. I sat there trying to decide, was it intentionally that bright and it kind of works, or was it a mistake?
And it almost sounded like it was actually a sample played with samples. I couldn't quite tell. It was so sort of kind of staccato and locked in.
Yeah.
However they got there, I thought it was cool and I liked it. But but that's the big thing. Like when I do what I consider my best mixes, almost none of the individual elements sound super exciting on their own.
Right.
And it's an amazing thing too. Like if I'm doing kind of a rock record, if you muted the overheads, you might hear and go, "Wow, this is a great job. I love the way you mix this. I love your guitar sounds, the voice."
Yeah.
And then if I muted my overheads, you'd go, "This guy sucks. His guitars are so boring.
Right.
And, why is the voice so dull?"
Yeah.
And then I put them back on. And you're like, "Yeah, this guy's great."
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You really need to find out who gets to be the star in different frequency ranges. And the challenge is when there's too much high end, it gets fatiguing to listen to and really smeared. Like you don't get definition of the top. And when you have too much in the low end, everything just gets muddy and
That's
nondescript.
why they call it balance.
Yeah. But I love the production. I love the tune. All the high frequency boost on everything. I couldn't make it to song 3. And you guys might notice that I keep saying the same garbage over and over again. Here, how about less of this? How about less of this? How about less of this? So in terms of, I'm pulling that instrument down or too much of this frequency. And most of the difference between, where you're at and the mixers above you is they kind of have worked out better about letting everything have its own space to live in and figuring out who gets to be the star in different ranges.
Yep. They think about it. They don't just sit there and try and make everything the star.
Yeah, and virtually everything I've recommended people do, they can do with the EQ that comes free with their DAW so far. I haven't said anything that requires somebody using anything except the EQ.
Esoteric is not in his vocabulary.
It is, but it's not the meat and potatoes of it.
Right. I've probably mentioned this before on the show. I may have mentioned it with you on the show, but many years ago, remember the song Celebrate or Celebration by Kool and the Gang?
Come on. We've all been to weddings, yes.
Yes, okay. They gave me a multi-track 24 to 24. I think it was 24, maybe 16. Pretty sure it was 24. And they gave me, one generation off, safety of it. And it just sounded horrible when you went track by track by track on that thing. I was sitting in the control room saying to my assistant, I can't believe this was a hit record. It sounds so bad. But if you just shoved all the faders up in a straight line, it sounded like a hit.
Yeah.
And it was because of the bleed into the 57 in front of the guitar amp or whatever was coming. Somehow it all worked. But if you went instrument by instrument, it was not just kind of bad. It was like horrifying.
Anyway. But it's the same thing too, like great string arrangers or orchestral arrangers do.
Yeah.
They don't have, let's have, the violas and the trumpets and trombones all try and play in this register.
Right.
They say, hey, let's give this to the piccolo flutes. Let's give this to the contrabass. And that's the same thing of mixing a heavy metal record. It's going, okay, we have this space that we want to fill up in different ways. Who gets what job? And when you try and put too much of the same thing, you can do anything you want for your creative art, but generally that's
a lot. But that's a lot of
translate
work.
Well. Yeah.
That is, you've ascended to a certain level of craftsmanship when you can do that stuff. Yeah. And you should. Contrabass, was that Ollie North or Ronald Reagan? You got to be really old to get
politics.
that. Yeah, you got to be really old to get that joke. I'm sure Neil McTavish will get it. Hi, Neil. Okay,
he's Canadian.
But let's not make fun of his love of hockey. Okay.
Or Tim Hortons.
All right. Moving on. This one's called This and That. It's by April Arlene, and it's a song.
Do you think I'm nasty? Do you think I'm rich? Do you think I'll roll around in a filthy ditch? Well, baby, if you have me, I'll be yours. I'll be there, knocking at your door. But you gotta be patient with me, baby. I know I'll do this and that, all the above and more. Yeah, this and that, all the above and more. I'll do this and that, all the above and more. Yeah, this and that, all the above and more. Well, I'm no liar, no bitch or tease. Come over here, baby, yeah, let me ease. Your pain is mine, my heart is yours. Baby, I'm ready, looking at your door. I'll do this and that, all the above and more. I will. Yeah, this and that, all the above and more. I'll do this and that, all the above and more. I will. Yeah, this and that, all the above and more. Spank me harder, and lick me wet. Lick me wet. I'm all yours, baby, don't you ever forget. Don't you ever forget. Fill me up till I overflow. Congrats, baby, you did it, you stole the show. Your pain is mine, my heart is yours. Baby, I'm ready, knocking at your door. I'll do this and that, all the above and more. I will. Yeah, this and that, all the above and more. I'll do this and that, all the above and more. I will. Yeah, this and that, all the above and more. Let's break it down, break it down. What you want, baby, baby, what you want, baby, baby, what you want, baby, baby, what you need. I'll give it to you right, I'll give it to you good. I'll give you just what you need. Look into my pretty brown eyes, tell me just what you see. What you want, baby, baby, what you want, baby, baby, what you want, baby, baby, what you need. I'll give it to you right, I'll give it
Cool.
to you good. I'll give you just what
They keep
you
bring it
need.
back up.
Okay.
I want to hear this
Yeah.
one to the end. I'm loving this.
Tell me just what you see. All the above and more. Yeah, this and that, all the above and more. I'll do this and that, all the above and more. Yeah, this and that, all the above and more. And this and that, I got you, sugar. I got you, honey. And this and that, I got you, baby. I got you, honey. This and that, all the above and more. Yeah, this and that, all the above and more.
Yeah, baby. Woohoo! I like that.
That was really, really good.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Can you please burn that onto a CD for my car?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Or a thumb drive. I don't care. No, do it on CD because I got something in my USB already. Hit it,
Well,
Jackson.
awesome.
Yeah.
A couple things. I'm usually a fan of mixing vocals low because when you mix vocals low, the whole band sounds big. But I would have liked the vocal up just a little bit more.
Really?
Just a hint.
Yeah.
Because this, there was lyrics that I'm sure I would have loved that I didn't quite get
Yeah.
on first listen through. So not in a big way, but just like we're talking a dB or so up. Also, to me, it sounded like that drum groove's. Pretty sure that was a loop. Or a very consistent drummer.
I didn't even pay attention to it. I'm loving the vocals so much. But
Yeah. So also, I mean, I would have liked to bring the focus a little bit more towards the voice. And the other minor thing that I would have done is, because we had that so consistent, so solid all the way through and kind of static, I would have tried to, when the new elements came in, I probably would have tried to do things a little more binary in a way. So it's sort of like it was going and then things started to creep in. And I think it would have been a little more exciting if they had just very defined came in on a few spots. So like we had sort of those Fender Rhodesy sort of bell-like things. I would have loved to those just
almost
boom.
sounded like a Celeste or something.
Yeah.
Very Motown.
Yeah.
Obviously, the
Yeah.
whole thing was very Motown. I remember at some point, probably 2/3 of the way through, thinking they've pulled just about every great Motown trick out.
Yep.
The drum sound, the guitar part, the Celeste, all that stuff is just classic Motown, and I thought executed really well. And it was kind of like a modern version of Motown, but with plenty of nod to the past. So it didn't suck in either direction. Sometimes people try and create something that's retro, and they.
But like Amy Winehouse did a great job of things. Like the nod was so over the top, but it still sounded contemporary.
Yeah.
And that's a lot.
That's what this did.
Yeah,
to
and
me.
it's a lot because the production and stuff of like Amy Winehouse is actually pretty raw and edgy and forward.
Did you hear they're actually doing an Amy Winehouse holographic tour?
I'll have to process what I think about that. I'm not sure yet.
I just saw it over the weekend.
And I would have that big thing again, mix wise. I would have tried to bring in a little more binary, so we really got that excitement of this new element, and then when it dropped out, like after the chorusy kind of part, boom, really cleanly coming back into that.
It needed a horn section with a big Barry sax on the bottom, didn't it?
It's hilarious. My next comment was going to be Barry sax.
Yeah, I mean, it was just dying.
To me,
that.
I didn't even need the big thing, but again, because that drum thing was so static, when we came back into the second verse, again, her voice is enough to carry the day. But I would have loved even just like, okay,
the sunlight. Sorry.
Yeah, so on bar 2 of that, you go bump bump, just to vary and something Barry sax. They've got so much character.
It needed some balls.
Yeah, and the Barry sax is great because you could bring it in big and exciting, but it would stay out of the way of her register versus bringing like an alto sax or something.
Right,
would
totally
pop right
it.
in, like would conflict it. A big Barry sax, tons of character, but left plenty of room for that vocal to still shine.
Yep.
But yeah, that was fantastic. That. Yeah, really.
I'm going to be listening to that in my car on repeat.
Yeah,
really
so well done.
April Arlene. Is April a member? They're all members? Awesome. Great job. Okay, next one is She's Mine. This is Nate Stewart, also a song.
Can't have her, she's mine. I'm gonna love her for all time. And it's clearly plain to see the girl's in love with number one. Who could that be? There ain't nothing you can do. So find another girl for you and keep on wishing you were in my shoes. You can't have her, she's mine. I just laugh when I see the way they look at you when you're with me. When we're out on that dance floor, so wild and free. 'Cause they know that you're the best when it comes to love. You wrote the litmus test. That's when I tell them the girl's with me. You can't have her, she's mine. I'm gonna love her for all time. And it's clearly plain to see the girl's in love with number one. Who could that be? And there ain't nothing you can do. So find another girl for you and keep on wishing you were in my shoes. You can't have her, she's mine. I can take most anything, but watching them watch you just makes me wanna drink. Sometimes I wish we were all alone, but I know you love to dance, and what my baby wants, my baby gets. So swing with me, baby, until the
Bria, can you play like from 10 seconds?
It's still at
Yeah.
10 seconds.
Uh-huh. Sorry.
We accommodate.
Just making the fans wait.
The girl's in love with number one. Who could that be? And there ain't nothing you can do. So find another girl
Okay,
for
thanks.
you.
And the verdict is?
Well, there was a big change in vocal
Yeah.
presence and level, and I wanted to see that happened right around the time you adjusted some volume. I wanted to make sure I wasn't.
Yeah, it came in so low, I felt like we weren't doing it any
Yeah.
justice by not listening to it at the same level as everything
But
else.
massive kudos to the way this track opens. Like within 2 seconds, I knew if I was going to be in or out on that.
Absolutely.
And
Everybody did. I was watching the chat.
Yeah, and it's like, and that's what the great, the great producers and the great writers do. And it's one of those things, like when you're listening to classic rock radio or old school hip hop radio,
Right.
like the things that are still around years later, they come on and like within a second, am I changing the channel or cranking it up?
Ralph Murphy always says you got to invite the listener in.
Yeah,
and this song absolutely
and this,
did that.
I mean, really, that beginning was
Yep.
just so fantastic, especially kind of on a genre that's kind of
been done 1,000
it's
times.
been done 1,000 times with treading a lot of the same ground.
Yeah.
Which even this song again in that tradition, but right out of the gate it said, "Hey, I'm doing something a little special," and it pulled you in.
You know what? This is so licensable for anybody that's doing something that. Who did Old Time Rock and Roll? Who was the original?
Bob Seger.
Yeah,
Or I don't know if he
think
did the
somebody-
original.
I don't think he did
Yeah.
the original, but he's a good example. Probably the most played version of it.
yeah.
Anybody that wanted something like that, that sounds enough like the era that, in its background source played at a sock hop or whatever, this would
Yeah,
definitely do it.
But there's about a minute or so in the vocal presence changed. I actually thought it sat really well in the first part.
Yeah.
And then it just jumped up.
Did something happen? Was it a bridge or something?
Something did change, but then it was kind of consistently, because I thought it was too hot from kind of from when it changed about.
So it didn't change on a section. It just changed on.
No, it changed on a section. I don't
Okay.
remember exactly what, but I remember thinking, oh yeah, it's in a good spot. George Jackson and Thomas E. Jones wrote that.
Wow.
But there we go. But yeah, to me, the vocal was just kind of too hot and in your face, which made the band sound a little small.
And the band was really good.
Yeah. And so I would have, again, tucked that vocal down, especially later in the song where it gets really big. And also on a mix thing. Same thing we talked about with a lot of the previous stuff is we have a lot of instruments fighting for the same real estate. The good news is here it's all kind of mid-range stuff, which doesn't come off as fatiguing or unpleasant or make you want to turn it down. But it does sort of rob some of the instruments of being able to pop out and be exciting. So I would try and find your place. Go, okay, we've got two guitars here. Which one gets to keep this chunk of the mid-range?
Right.
Which one gets to keep this chunk? The drums had a lot of build up around 500 hertz where you scoop that out. There'd be more chest resonance from the voice, a little more woodiness of the guitars.
How'd you feel about the bottom end, the specifically the relationship of the kick and bass?
I never thought anything about that, and I say that as a positive.
Right.
Yeah.
If it didn't capture your
Yeah.
attention. So I actually did pay attention to it, and I remember thinking pretty early on, it's like, that works.
Yeah.
So there you go.
But
two ways.
Yeah, so clear up some of that mid-range with some subtractive EQ, and everything would just sound bigger and wider and more exciting without having to turn anything up. But really well done.
All right, let's do another one. This one is an instrumental by John Allen. It's called Lift Me Higher. loved it.
They loved it. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling whoever did this could do stuff that I would love.
John Allen.
So I know we're here supposed to talk about mixing, but it's
Sometimes if the music just moves you,
Yeah.
spill your guts.
but part of it is on a crass commercialism. This sounds like the kind of thing that would be pitched as a cue. And it's starting with that very kind of digitally piano sort of thing that we got to sit through for a little while until we realize that this is primarily an acoustic guitar tune. And for really busy music supervisors who are going to go through 173 tracks,
They're not going to get to
they
the
would
guitar.
hear that instantly and go, oh, this is kind of a synthy ambient thing. Next cue. When maybe they were looking for something. So crass commercialism, I would have put a strum of an acoustic guitar
Right.
right out of the gate. So this is the
It defines what
this
it
is
is,
the
or-
vibe of it.
Yeah.
And
the guitar, by the way, was beautifully recorded.
yeah, the guitar is beautifully recorded. I actually, in terms of the sound of the keyboard, I would have I would have scooped a bunch of mid range out of it. Boy, I'm broken record. But
If there's one thing everybody learns after a year of sitting at a console is mid-range sucks. Get rid of it most of the time.
But allowing the coolest mid range to come to the
Yeah.
forefront. But I would have actually liked to heard like a more interesting piano sound since it's going to carry on and not do something very dramatic. But EQ wise, you could have got that to tuck into its place. But the challenge with something like this, sitting down to mix it, is there wasn't really a focal point in it. And this is going back more to composition and arrangement issues. Like I had a chance to do some master classes with the composer Arvo Pärt, which I was completely unqualified to participate in. But his whole
Just
thing was
fake
like,
it. I fake it
yeah.
all the time. You're going to see me fake it at the Road Rally, November 1st through the 4th in Los Angeles.
But his thing was like, everything I compose is 2 lines. We can't really relate to anything more than that, and everything else is just ways to support and accompany 2 lines.
Okay.
And so
Got to think about that.
So on something like this, where you had, dang, 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 the rhythm thing with the piano, and then you had all these different melodic lines sort of going, and they didn't really have sort of a contrapuntal relationship to each other, or weren't really trading off in ways that we'd understand.
Right.
It sort of came out like we've got this vampy keyboard thing.
At some point, it grabbed your attention, and you go, "Did you really need that part?"
It sort
For
of
me,
just
anyway.
it sort of just felt like 4 or 5 really good guitar players kind of hanging around noodling, and I would have loved to have seen one of those melodies get developed as the primary thing, or even trade off or interplay between 2 of those. But when we had, I think at times 4 guitars all doing melodic things that weren't really interlocking, it just kind of took me out of it. So.
You know what else it did from not a mixed perspective, but exactly what you're talking about? It walked away from the emotion.
Yeah,
It was right on the precipice of contemplative.
Yeah.
And all of a
And
sudden
it started
went-
that way.
Yeah, and it went from being contemplative to revelatory, which it would be okay if you were scoring a scene.
Yeah.
Where somebody was being contemplative and then the reveal happens, but that ruined it as a standalone cue because he can't be 2 things.
Yeah, because I think just developing like one of those lines, because if you listen to even something like great classic Pink Floyd or whatever, you have a beautiful guitar melody, and then you have space, and then you really know where to focus. And this was sort of pulling my ear in a lot of different places.
Easily fixed in the mix, though. By just taking out 2 of those parts, this thing would be a lot better. Not that it sucked by any stretch of the imagination. It was really well done.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, because the truth is, even if you have 5 great parts, if they aren't 5 great parts that support each other, they're all lesser for it. And so a lot of times, as we've talked about this probably every time we've been here, that the mute button is one of our most powerful mixing tools. Like you start getting things, throwing things away, and not that those things are bad, but they're pulling attention away from the most important elements.
It's kind of like having 4 kids. Sometimes you only want 2 of them at the dinner table. It stops a lot of fighting.
There you go.
All right, let's. We got 2 more, and we're already 3 minutes over. So let's kind of go quick on these next 2.
Okay.
This one's called "Dreams Come True" by Azalea. It's a song.
Cool. Only stopping because we have short time left.
There.
Yeah.
I killed it.
In the last 10 years, the quality of taxi stuff has just jumped exponentially.
Every
it's really
year,
amazing.
After
It's
the
amazing.
road rally, Michael Lloyd pulls me aside and he gives me a hug and he always says, it was 20% better this year. It's because the members keep getting educated. They feed off information they're sharing. Yeah, it does.
I thought this was really good. I mean, I loved it from beat one. The vocal was just on the edge of being too edgy. I mean, there's some little stuff that I could fix in mastering about a little too much 800 hertz buildup, but sorry to be
Man, you're loving your 8 and 900s today.
it's right in our vocal range.
Yeah.
You know, around 1K, it's right in our vocal range. But the vocal is like a little edgy, but I was cool with it because a lot of contemporary, especially
Works
like,
with their attitude.
yeah, and a lot of female, like the rockier stuff of Katy Perry or Pink will have a little of that edge too. It was right on the edge, and I was digging being on that edge. And then when those really big hi-hats came in, the combination was too much. And all of a sudden, it was like that combination of they're really fat hi-hats with the vocal edginess to me kind of went over the top, and it got to be sort of
See, I thought the bottom end saved it. The kick and the bass, and boy, was that drummer steady.
exactly. He's good.
The guy, I noticed that, but then I thought, okay, it got rescued by the fact that the bottom end is nice and tight and
Yeah.
firm and where it should be level wise. So
Yeah.
I was okay with it.
Yeah, and that would have been my thing though, because and that really just pulling out what you could have done. I mean, I thought that hi-hat was a tiny bit loud in general, but just subtractive EQ of that hi-hat in the primary vocal range. Like I would have taken that hi-hat with a parametric EQ, and while I was playing, swept it around till it really messed up her voice, and then pulled that
Right.
frequency down. And that way we get that excitement and that drive there.
-5 right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because then we could still have that real excitement of the new hi-hat part, because it's the first time we really introduce real high energy into the mix. And we could still let her voice be exciting in that range as well. But really good. Sounds great.
I was impressed.
Yeah.
I want to know, is it pronounced Azalea? Well, not Iggy Azalea. Last one is called So Good. It's by Rob Malka, and it's a song.
So the years have outrun you, blinking and one after another. I stand right here by your side, and never to waver, a moment to savor every moment I can. 'Cause you've been so good to me, you've been so good to me. Whatever the weather, you've been so good to me. Slow, I managed to wake up. You put on your makeup, you keep hope alive. I'll shake the right hands, I'll do the right favors. Our loves and our labors here until we arrive. Yeah, you've been so good to me, you've been so good to me. Whatever the weather, you've been so good to me. And so our roads have unraveled, the abandoned and traveled, the terms and the plans, our lives on the tide, our tears on the embers, a note to remember every moment I can. been so good to me. You've been so good to me. Whatever and whether, you've been so good to me.
Nice.
Roll out the 900.
Yeah. And I'm only cutting all these off so we can get through songs.
Right.
So there's really good stuff. And another thing that's like,
That was right
So
out of the
good.
Don Gaiman producing and engineering John Mellencamp playbook, record number 2.
so a couple quick things. I would have compressed the voice more to get it to be a little bit more consistent and sort of pop in and out a little bit less.
Okay.
And then overall, I would have tucked it in just a little bit.
Yeah,
Lower it just a little bit. Not a big thing, but just so it's with stuff like this that really feels like a band. You want the singer to be part of the band versus sitting on top of the band. So I would have pulled it in just a little bit.
We're talking hairs, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
we're talking maybe a dB, and also again with compression, we'd be able to dial that in easier. So I'd compress that a fair bit more.
a fair bit more. Look on your compressor. There's a fair bit more. It's
My fair bit more preset?
Right. 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, fair bit more.
Yeah, I'll sell them to you. My presets. So,
$35.
and also, I would have done a few things just with automating to let like when that guitar solo came in. I would have liked to pull the guitar solo a little bit more in, but maybe automate down some of the accompaniment, like the rhythm guitars or something. And we're not talking a huge thing, but you could drop those 3 dB through that solo section.
It's nuance.
Yeah, so you still hear every note, all the inflection of the player, but it doesn't pop out and feel separate.
Okay.
And really just when it got real dense with bashing cymbals and the organ, experimenting a little bit to, again, give everything its place. But we're talking small differences. I thought that was really good.
I agree. Overall today, a lot of great stuff. I saw somebody ask it in the chat room, how do you guys choose the songs? So that it basically was saying, how do I get mine heard? There is no methodology to it. It's not like we sit there and go through 250 that are submitted or 119 that are submitted going, ooh, let's pick that one. And I'm only guessing because I know that Bria picks them a couple of ways. Number one is if we're pressed for time, she basically is like, Michael, she calls me, how many do you want today? I'll say 12. She's liable to grab the first 12 things that came in, assuming that they're all from Taxi members, giving them a little preference. Is that true?
No, it's random.
Today was totally
I only
random.
do that for top 10.
Okay, so, and there is no methodology that excludes anybody. It's just, we got a lot of stuff and, it's like, can't play everybody. Sorry. I wanted to also, do you have any retreats coming up? I know that you do retreats that are well loved by everybody.
I do a whole bunch, but in May, and if you guys are at the rally, you can talk to me about it.
Yeah.
But I'm doing a songwriting retreat and a recording retreat at a beautiful resort in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Just like 90 minutes from Washington Dulles Airport.
Wow. Is John Denver going to be there?
Probably not.
West Virginia.
Yes, but we got really great people. Like I'm doing it. Rick Girard, who did the Jefferson Airplane stuff. And John Rod, who's worked on tons of big films and things like that.
How do you end up in places like West Virginia?
I grew up in Virginia, regular Virginia.
Okay. Really? What part?
Arlington. I was born in D.C.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I love Arlington.
And and my songwriting one, that songwriting one's for 4 days, recording is for 5 days.
And are they back to back?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
But I've got one of my main guys. There's Dave Nachmanoff, who I met at a road rally.
Okay.
Fantastic. Tours the world with Al Stewart and his own music. And Kevin Quinn, who you and I both know, who
You'll
wrote,
love Quinny's the best. What a guy.
But he's fantastic. But he wrote like everything from like these beautiful singer-songwriter songs to stuff for High School Musical and, TV
Tons of, literally
theme shows.
like 1,000 things that you've heard on
Yeah,
TV.
like tons of Disney stuff and, tons of radio jingles. So it's great because like Dave Nachmanoff is very much a craft wordsmith. And Kevin Quinn has just had massive success with just like go for the throat pop stuff, who also is a wordsmith.
If you go, what you do is you invite Kevin Quinn to go golfing, and you will get his complete attention for at least 9 holes, if not 18.
And also, yeah, if you want to know more, talk to me at the rally is the best place. But also, if you go to recordingbootcamp.com,
Right.
And if you tell us you're a taxi member, we'll give you $100 off the registration fee for that.
And does everybody stay in the same place for the
Yeah,
retreat?
and that's the whole thing. It's this beautiful retreat up in the mountains, and the cool thing is it's everybody's together. So everyone's staying at the retreat, but we have all our meals together. So all the attendees, all the mentors, we're all just hanging out together.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's not a kind of thing where you'll see like one of the mentors for their 40-minute slot.
I was going to say, if Burt Reynolds shows up wearing like a wetsuit top with a bow and arrow, run.
I'll be very concerned if some of the people you're talking about show
I know.
up.
What can I say?
But we're all hanging out, having all our meals together, and doing
Burt
fun
Reynolds
stuff
trying
and
to
partying.
shoot of John Denver as he ran. Yeah.
West
Anyway,
Virginia's kind of awesome, though. Actually, it really is.
I went there when I was a senior in high school. Packed a Hertz truck or a Ryder truck full of food and stuff, and brought it to people in the Appalachian Mountains.
Nice.
Unbelievable. Families still living in houses with dirt floors in America. But really nice people, gorgeous, gorgeous.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you very much.
Awesome. I love being here.
I love having you.
And I'm stoked to see all you guys at the rally.
Which is November 1st through the 4th in Los Angeles. Hurry up and book. I haven't actually picked a date that we're shutting down registration, but it's coming soon, and we are still over last year's numbers.
Nice. And I'll have a table in the booksellers room. Just come hang out and chat with me. And Liz Redwing will be there a bunch. You know her as well. So you can chat with her.
And I don't know what I'm doing on next week's show. I do know that Robin Frederick is coming up on the 29th of October. So don't miss that one. And thank you again, Mr. Ronan Chris Murphy. Ladies and gentlemen. See you next week for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Woo! Oh, yeah. I've got to click something, don't I?